Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Frost Knight. Now was calling it the Frozen Death Knight, but I changed it to the Frost Knight because I felt it fit better. This is based on the World of Warcraft Frost Death Knight setup, kind of. Set in the Elder Scrolls universe, so it uses the Elder Scrolls setup more than it does the Death Knight from Elder. Wow, yeah. But I just wanted to kind of clear that up. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this build by taking a look at our character sheet. So you can see Frost Knight. It is a Warden, a Nord Warden, that works really good for this build. Any race can do this though. Just letting you know. Alright, we have 64 points into stamina. This gives us a max stamina pool of 30,000. We do have 17k max magic, a 27k max health, 931 magic recovery, 409 health recovery with a 568 stamina recovery. Our weapon damage is coming in at 2305 with a 42% weapon critical, 1606 spell damage with a 25% spell critical. On spell resistance, we have 23k, physical resistance, almost 23k as well, and then 1320 critical resistance. Moving on, we have the Thief Mundus Stone, Ebon Armory, Major Savagery, and Tri-Stat Food. This is all the time, so is this and the Thief. Okay, we know that, Sherman. Alright, sorry. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the sets. Now, one of the staples of this set is, of course, Ice Hearts, and it's really important that you understand the importance of this set. So, not only does this give you a little bit of spell crit, which you don't really need, but it does help, it's that 2-piece bonus. When you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs 5,800 damage for 6 seconds. And then while the shield holds, you deal 675 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters of you every 1 second. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. This is the important part. Every 6 seconds. Alright, our next set, and this is something new to this build, and that is the Night Mother's Gates. With the changes to the Warden sub-assault, not having the major breach, I needed to put it in there. So this helps you do that. 2-piece weapon critical, 3-piece weapon damage, 4-piece weapon critical, and then the 5-piece. When you deal critical damage of any kind, you apply Major Breach to your enemies, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 6k for 4 seconds. And anytime you deal critical damage, it will reapply that effect. So it's permanent if you can keep the crits up. The next set we're running is Ebon Armory. Now, I like this set on this build particularly because of the way it works. Now, a lot of people are going to say, but it's a tank set. It's an any one set. Let's get that clear, because it's not referenced anywhere on that set that it says tanks only. It says it's a set. The set bonus is really nice. The 2- and 3-piece max health, the 4-piece 4% healing, take it. The 5-piece bonus is what we're really looking at here, though. This increases your max health by 1,000 for you and up to 11 other group members within 28 meters of you for permanent. So you constantly get this 1,000 extra health, which does get the amplifications of any percentage health increases you might get from anything else. So just letting you know, really, really good. So that's how we end up with that 27k health. Now this build, because of its design, is more of a bruiser type. It's a heavy armor DPS build. Yes, you heard me correctly. Heavy armor DPS build. So it works great in PvE and in PvP, and that's what's so good about it, is it works in both really well. Alright, let's go ahead and go over our traits and enchants. Traits first, so starting with the helm and the legs, we are running Invigorating. I like Invigorating. I know a lot of people would be like, but Divines would be better because it would just amplify your Mundus Stone more. And you can do that. Remember, a build is just a template. It is just an idea placed out there by somebody that is not set in stone. You can change it. These are just, the way that somebody else might play it. This is how I play it. So I like this setup. So Invigorating gives you increased health, magic, and stamina recovery by 16 on each piece. So that's a 32 point increase, which when you add it to other things does add up to a much better value. Alright, moving on to the smaller pieces. We are running 4 Divines here for the Mundus Stone increase. We are a DPS, so we do want that higher Mundus or higher damage output. The other thing that's nice about this build is if you wanted to, you could tank dungeons with it quite nicely, especially base game dungeons. DLC dungeons are a little bit harder to tank with this, but they can be done just like trials. So base game trials, the ones in Craglorn, you can tank with this almost no problem on normal and veteran. Hard mode's a little bit more, would be more of a trick, and then on the DLC trials, it would be definitely much harder, but it's possible, and it would probably be better as an off tank. So just letting you know. All right, moving on to the chest piece, we are running Reinforced. This increases your armor's value by 16% on the one piece you're wearing. Not all your armor, just on this one piece. So that's why this one has 3,215 armor. That is both physical and spell resistance. So that really does help give you that higher resistance value. Now, the pieces you're going to want to run for this in their armor type, these 5 pieces in heavy, so the chest, the shoulders, the gloves, the legs, and the boots. You'll want a light belt. And since Night Mothers is a crafted set, you can do this. The reason for the light belt and the medium helm here is because your belt is your lowest armor rated piece on your character. It's 700 and something in heavy. So losing 200 resistance here is not a problem when you reinforce this. This goes up by 300. And this piece gives you 1823, which is almost equivalent to the medium gloves. So, and the heavy helm difference, like with this setup, you actually end up with greater resistances than you would if you had the medium gloves, light belt, everything else heavy. You actually end up with more. Alright, but always make sure you reinforce the heavy piece of gear. That way you get the highest amount of resistances out of your character. Alright, now that I've shown you that, we're going to go over enchants on the body pieces. So, helm, chest, and legs, tri-stat. And the reason for this is tri-stat, the big pieces, helm, chest, and legs, when you enchant them, they take the maximum value of the enchant towards the armor. So if you were using, let's say, a stamina enchant, it would give you a lot higher value than a tri-stat in just stamina. But with tri-stat, you get all 3 attributes: magicka, stamina, and health. And that can be very important when you're playing the game, especially at a later, like at the end game. Having those 3 stats really help out. On the smaller pieces, we are running the max stamina. This is going to give you a higher stamina pool because your primary stat is stamina. So using this is really good. And then, of course, like I said, the tri-stats here help. On to the jewelry. We are running the 3-piece Ebon Armory rings, or jewelry. So we have 2 rings that are Trirune traits. So the Trirune traits are basically like tri-stat enchants, and they give you those higher stat values. And then we have 2 weapon damage enchants, 1 in each ring. On the necklace, we are running an infused necklace. This increases the effectiveness of the enchant on here, which is magic recovery, and that's why it comes out to 270. Alright, moving on now to the weapon. So on our weapons, we are running 2 swords, 1 infused, 1 Nirnhoned. traits, with the enchants being frost damage in the infused one, and on the Nirnhone one we are using an absorb stamina. This setup, I know a lot of people say Nirnhone on the main hand, infused on the offhand is better. I like this setup because of the fact that when you put the Nirnhone on the offhand, you actually get greater weapon damage. Not actual physically greater weapon damage, but you get a greater amount of weapon damage applied to your overall weapon damage because of it. So, and then moving on to the Ebon Bow. We are using an infused version with a weapon damage enchant. So we get 452 weapon and spell damage added to these values for 5 seconds, but it will stay up continuously because we have a infused bow, which actually changes the duration from 5 seconds to 3 seconds of effective application, so you constantly keep it applied. The other thing is that we are using Endless Hail or Arrow Barrage on the back bar to keep that applied more effectively. Alright, now that I've shown you the gear, we're going to go on to skills. And just so you guys know, I do this in all my videos. Always make sure you unlock all your class passive abilities, because you never know what abilities you might be using in the long term. So, like, in different situations, you don't know what class abilities you might be using. Maybe in one instance you might be using Enchanted Forest and Soothing Spores, or even Green Lotus, or even Leeching Vines, those kind of things, to give you different benefits for not only you but for your group. So you have that's really good. And then the same thing goes with like any of your other abilities. You'll have access to the passive effects, which is super important. Same thing goes for weapon and your weapon passives, your guild passives, armor passives, world passives, whatever skills you might learn, take the passives. Alright, now starting with the skills we have on our bar. So front bar, dual wield, back bar, bow. So starting on the front bar, we do have Blood Craze. This is a great damage ability with a damage over time and a great heal over time. So this is one of the reasons why we use it. It gives us some survivability, but it also gives us a decent amount of damage. Next ability we have here is Rapid Strikes. This deals damage over time, and each hit increases the damage by 3%, with the final hit dealing 300% more damage. Really good, and it hits a total of, I think, 6 times or 5 times. So next ability we have is Gripping Shards. This is great. This makes us build a great, not only bruiser, but what I like to call a disruptor. It's someone who can disrupt the movement of people and, you know, immobilize them, that kind of thing. So it's really great as disruption in PvP and in PvE. So what it does is it immobilizes the targets for 3 seconds, dealing X amount of frost damage every second for 12 seconds. Enemies hit are overcome with Bitter Cold, reducing their movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. So not only do they get the 3-second immobilize, anyone in that area that walks into that area gets 30% movement speed reduction. And then the damage is based on your max health, so that's why we have a 27k max health. Next ability we have is Arctic Blast. Again, great ability. Does heal over time, or heal up front, heal over time. So it heals you up front, and then heals you for almost 1,000 every second for 5 seconds. And then while the effect persists, the winds pulse outwards, dealing frost damage every second. And this is why it's really important that we have that back bar bow enchant that gives us weapon and spell damage, because we can actually boost this up to 1,000 damage over time. Next ability we have, and you can actually swap out if you wanted to, this back bar ability or this front bar ability on the back bar with Green Lotus. I just prefer having it up all the time. So I use Evil Hunter. This gives you Major Savagery at all times, increasing your weapon critical by pretty much 10%. I don't have to use a potion. I use Tri-Stat pots on this character anyways, because I go through a lot of Magicka and Stamina together. So having this here really helps. So, next up we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. Another great ability. It does physical damage to enemies in front of it in a cone, and it deals damage over 6 seconds. A lot of damage, in fact. And then after activating it, you get 300 weapon damage for 20 seconds. And since it's such a low-cost ultimate, you can pretty much get that back, like the 125 ultimate, in 20 seconds if you have a good, solid rotation going on. So you can keep that up non-stop. But that's not the main ultimate we use. It's there for the weapon damage. Let's just not lie. Alright, moving on to the back bar. Our first ability we have here is Venom Arrow. Great ability. Does damage up front, damage over 10 seconds, and then on top of that, if an enemy is hit, is casting an ability, they are interrupted, set off balance, and stunned for 3 seconds. The reason I like this, is both PvE and PvP, is because, one, in PvE, I hate healers in dungeons and in trials, and I hate spellcasters, and I hate archers. So this gives me a great way to interrupt them when they're at a distance. So yeah, beneficial. Next ability we have is Arrow Barrage. Really great. AoE, does damage over time, over 8 seconds. It does have a 2-second delay in damage, but it does apply your enchant immediately, so that's kind of nice. Next up, we have Bull Netch. Great ability, gives you 5k roughly stamina over 25 seconds, grants you Major Brutality and Sorcery, increasing both weapon and spell damage by 20%, and then every 5 seconds you remove 1 negative effect from yourself. Great for PvE and PvP. Next ability we have, and this is kind of like one that I say is a floater ability, but I like using it regardless. It gives you and your group Major Resolve, increasing spell and physical resist by 6k for 24 seconds. It also grants you Minor Protection for reducing 5% of the damage you take for 24 seconds. So it gives you that 24 seconds of Minor Protection and Major Resolve, but it also gives Major Resolve to your allies. Next up, Evil Hunter. Again, we want that high crit chance on both bars. Now, you also have to remember, any fighter guild abilities you might use, so if you wanted to drop Frostcloak and take the Trap Beast, you will get a 5 or 25% decrease in its cost. So, or increase in its damage, sorry. So you can, or stamina cost, yes. So, while it increases damage of your stamina costing fighter abilities, that's it, by 25%. So that's why I like it. It's really nice for that fact. And since we have it on both bars, it does maintain that 25% damage increase, even when you flip bars. Last but not least, our main primary ultimate, Northern Storm. I love this ability. It is so amazing. Twist a violent storm around you, dealing 3,391 frost damage every second for 8 seconds to enemies around you, and reducing their movement speed by 40%, increasing your max magic by 15% for 30 seconds, and you and nearby allies gain major protection, reducing their damage taken by 10%. The great thing about this is when you activate this, you get that 15% increase in max magicka, which increases the damage output of Arctic Blast. So great. So great. Even though it's only one ability, it is so great to have that. Alright, now that I've shown you guys all the skills, we're going to move on to CP. And again, I do use a universal kind of CP setup. A very generic thing for a lot of people, but if you want to use a different CP setup, there's a lot of guides out there for different CP setups for different things like trials, PvP, PvE, you know, whatever, solo play, all that stuff. You can use those different ones. But I use this all the time. It doesn't matter what I'm playing, and it works. So that's why I like it. So, we have 56 in the Ironclad. This reduces your damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. 18 in the Spell Shield. This increases your spell resist by 1729. Moving on over here, we have 31 in the Thick Skin, giving you a reduced damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. We have 43 into Hardy, reducing physical poison disease damage by 10%. 43 in the Elemental Defender, reducing flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on to the final red tree, we have 40 into Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then 20 into Heavy Armor Focus, giving you 1900 physical resistance while wearing 5 pieces or more of heavy armor. Moving on, we have 40 into Warlord. This reduces your break free costs by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 into Arcanist. This increases your mag recovery by 10%. 75 into Tenacity, increasing your magic and stamina of your fully charged heavy attacks by 14%. And then moving on to the final green tree, we have 40 into Tumbling. This reduces your dodge roll cost by 16%. And then we have 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Last but not least, we are in the blue tree, and we have 43 into Blessed, which increases your healing done by 10%. We have 23 into Elfborn, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. Now, this does apply, just to let you know, to both your Gripping Shards and your Arctic Blast. Even though Gripping Shards does damage based off your max health, it is still a magic ability. So this does help with that critical damage output. 43 into Elemental Expert. This increases your Flame, Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. So that frost damage we get from Arctic Blast is actually increased. And so is the one from our Gripping Shards. Now, Gripping Shards does base off your max health, the damage, but it also takes advantage of this as well. Moving on, 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. Your light, heavy attacks with one-handed, dual-wield, bow, werewolf form is increased by 20%. And then finally, Master at Arms, we have 40 here, which increases your direct damage done by 16%. Last tree, 43 into Mighty. This increases physical, poison, disease damage by 10%. And then we have 23 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then we have the 20 into Thaumaturge, which increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. So not a bad setup for what it does. Now, as always, I like to show the build off in a dungeon. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over here to the Depths of Malatar, and I am on normal mode. So this is going to give you an idea of what this thing's like with its damage output for DPS and its survivability, along with a little bit of how the rotation or gameplay works with this build. It has a really unique kind of setup. So the rotation requires a heavy attack every so often to keep your stamina coming in. So I'll kind of call it out when you guys are watching when I do that. So a lot of people will be like, well, this is just a solo build. No, this is an all-around, it can do anything build. So, alright, buffing up again. Starting with that, we're going to go ahead and do this stuff. Get our ice shards going. Now you'll see I throw in a heavy attack, do 2 of those rapid strikes, and I'll throw in a heavy attack kind of thing in between. So I'll go rapid strikes, this gripping shards, the Arctic Wind, heavy attack, rapid strikes, heavy attack, rapid strikes. So it kind of just keeps it in a constant there. You're up me, huh? And you'll notice I don't do a heavy attack all the time. I'm constantly watching my stamina. So I do that. There we go. I do that so I can keep that stuff active. The other thing I want to show in, and I'll do it in the boss room here, I'm going to go ahead and hit this guy with poison injection out the door, and then I'll show you guys the spell damage of my Arctic Blast real quick so you guys can see. So it does go up to like 1200. Gonna go ahead and get 2 attacks on him. Go ahead and drop the gripping shards, and I want to get the Arctic Wind up before I switch bars. So I have the, there we go, so I have that up while I'm fighting this guy. Now you'll notice that I go through quite a bit of magicka. That's the reason why we want to keep our potions active, is so we can keep up the 1256 magic recovery. Went ahead and Dawnbreakered him. And you'll notice how I kind of keep a constant backup going. Alright, so he's going to run around this way now. Alright, let's get ahead and do this. And excuse the phone. I am getting really annoyed by that every morning kind of thing. So, just going to let it ring, guys. Sorry. But let's go ahead and let this guy kill me. That way I can get out of here and close out this video. But I do want to talk a little bit more about this build when I'm done. So as you guys can see, it does have a great sustainability, great survivability. It does struggle a little bit with magic, but that's why we need to keep those potions. The Tri-Stat potions is so we can keep our stamina and our magicka constant, and keep them full. And it's one of the reasons why I use those other abilities to give myself the weapon damage and the spell damage boost. You know, in the not Ice Fortress, the Bullnetch. And that's why I also use Evil Hunter, or I use Green Lotus for the Major Savagery to increase my weapon damage. But I also like the fact that this gives me that benefit for Fighter's Guild if I don't want to use Ice Fortress. But I do like using Ice Fortress because of the fact of what it does for my allies and stuff around me. So even in PvP, it's really great, especially when you're in a small like group. You can give that Ice Fortress out. You're giving out that 1,000 extra health. You know, there's a lot of different things that you got to look at with this kind of setup. But that's pretty much it for the Frost Knight. Sorry. The Frost Knight build. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.